looking at source 3, it's always looking at source 3. So here we're using the January 2013 paper. It's the Hedgehog Home. And the skill in this question is always to explain language features. So as soon as you see source 3, think, right, okay, I'm looking for language features. I'm going to have to explain the effect of these language features. Well, you might be thinking right now, and I don't blame you, you might be thinking, what are language features? And it doesn't help that we call them lots of different things. So we might say language devices, language techniques, rhetorical devices sometimes, but essentially what it is, it's just the features of language that we use all the time to add meaning or create interest in what we're saying. So for example, I might say the man walked through the forest. We'd have a very simple image of a man walking through a forest. If I say the man crept through the forest, we get a sense of him possibly hiding, or a sense of him doing something more sinister, and there being something, an element of danger there. So that very specific verb choice there, rather than saying walked, I've used the verb crept. That creates a totally different meaning, and that is the feature of language that I'm using there to add to that meaning. I might also say to my oldest child as he's eating his cereal, you're eating like a pig. Now I'm using a simile there, but really the effect of that is you get a sense of the noise that he's making. You get a sense of perhaps him being a bit greedy in how he's eating. You also get a sense of his head being almost in the bowl as he's eating, which it often seems to be. So we get a sense of lots of different things there, this very kind of disgusting image that I've just created by saying you're eating that like a pig. So that is those kinds of little things that we do in language all the time, and you use language features in your own conversations, and they're the different techniques that we use basically. Okay, so these techniques can be things like, which hopefully will be familiar to you, things like alliteration, similes, metaphors, but it can also be very specifically just the choice of words. So like the man creeping in the forest, it's that verb choice there, and you can, a verb choice or a powerful adjective or a more sinister verb is a feature of language. It's not, you don't have to, and I suppose what I'm leading to really is this idea that a forest, and a forest has value in that it helps you remember things, but you also need to remember not to be limited by this. Don't see it as something that you're going to find limiting really, and get to the paper and think, oh, I can't find any alliteration. You know, look also really closely at the language that is used, the very small features of language, and I'm going to show you an example of this. So firstly then, what are you asked to do in question 3? Right, okay, so the first thing is identify a technique or a language feature. So as I've said, that could be something like alliteration, might be metaphor. They are not going to make this easy for you though. They're not just going to give it to you on a plate. So you might get in there and think, oh, I can't find stuff there. The things aren't going to be immediately obvious. So, or a very specific feature of language. Then add a quotation and then say what it does, what's the effect of that. And really what you want to do there is go on about that. What is the effect? So what's the effect then of using this very specific word? So you need some examples of language features, some comment on the effects of the features with relevant quotations. Don't forget the quotations, they're really important. A focused example then of language features. Develop comment on the effects of the features of language, so those little things that we do with language and what that then makes the reader feel, with relevant quotations. Okay, and really here then what I've got is is an example really of where you might get a little bit stuck when you go and you think, right, okay, I know alliteration, and then you get there and you think, right, okay, throughout the text, alliteration is used. So make a hedgehog home. This makes the reader, well, what does it do? What's the effect of that alliteration? Because without talking about the effect, you're really limited in your response. So, what is the effect? Well, you could say that hedgehog home, that repetition of the h sound, creates a kind of softness which promotes a feeling of safety for the hedgehog. That would be a good comment. However, I'm saying that as an English teacher, I can, think about alliteration in that way. It might be more difficult for you to do that, and the exam responses suggest that that is probably the case. So you can use alliteration more powerfully to back a point up, and I'll show you a little bit how to do that in a moment. So if you look at this response then, throughout the text, commands are used. Make a hedgehog home. This comes across as possibly forcing someone to do what they are being asked to do, as they're telling them what to do. Okay, you might also say imperative there. We're being told to do something, and that is a skilled response to that question. It's got a language feature, so the command is the language feature, a relevant quotation, and then it's got some comment on the effect of that language feature. But if you look now at this one, this is better, okay, and this is a better way as well, I think, for you to approach alliteration and to get a developed comment on effect out of your quotation. So, for example, there are examples of emotive language in the text. Hedgehog numbers are drastically declining and are fatal to hedgehogs. The use of drastically makes it seem more urgent to persuade the reader that they need to do something as soon as possible. The alliteration here emphasises the danger that makes the reader feel sorry for the dying hedgehogs. Okay, so I've used alliteration there really to give a more focused and developed response. So don't think you just need to say one thing about a quotation or one language feature even. You can I'm drawing on that being quite emotive, and then I'm also drawing on that alliteration there. The word fatal is strong as it means death will again make the reader feel sorry for the hedgehogs and make them more likely to do something to help. Okay, so I could talk there about it being a powerful word, and that sense of death for the hedgehogs is making the reader more likely to do something quite urgently. Okay, so look really carefully at how that's bringing out more than one point about those quotations, and don't be afraid to link some quotations together. In some ways that might give you greater scope to have a more developed comment. If you're thinking about verb choice as well, I think when you look at this, and it's a difficult text this to find language features in, but if you look at the munching, for example, of the hedgehog, now that creates this cute and kind of lovable image which makes the hedgehog sound really cute. It's munching on slugs and snails in the garden, which makes it sound like something that you'd want to have around. It makes it's better than eating, basically. If you think about the difference between eating and munching, we also get a sense really of the sound of the hedgehog as well there, don't we? Okay, right. So top tips then for question 3. Again, same. I'm going to say this a lot. Timing. You've got 18 minutes to do this. It's quite a long time, so step back and think, don't just rush into writing. You've got time to identify some key things there, so use that time really effectively, but don't let yourself run over. It's always source 3, so know as soon as you're reading source 3, you know the question that you are going to be asked. Don't be limited by a forest. Don't think, oh, I can't find a metaphor, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Look very specifically at the choice of words, specifically verbs and adjectives, and the effect that they may make. So use quotations, sometimes linked quotations, sometimes having two quotations together will allow you to perhaps draw out a greater comment. So you need about 4 point evidence explain or TP, whichever technique you've been learning to do that well. Take a word out of your quotation and explain how this might affect the reader, okay? So the word fatal, for example, in that extract there. So taking out one word and explaining the meaning of that word and what the effect of that is. Okay, so the other thing about question 3 in language features is you just actually really need to be quite attuned to it. So you can revise for this all the time. So every time you're reading, think about how the writer is using language features. Every time you are watching TV even, and the adverts that come up, you use language features all the time to try and persuade you to do things, or sometimes not to do things. So just become really aware of of the word choices that people are making, in order for you to become really conscious and think about the effect of what specific words do.